Well, after two devastating floods in recent years, a major project is underway now to prevent some of that from happening again in Lumberton.
News 13's Brandon Herring found out a plan to install floodgates is decades overdue. And despite concerns about delays, it's now moving forward.
Trying to save homes and businesses.
It was just 2 months ago when people in Lumberton frantically worked to build a sandbag mound and temporary berm just before Hurricane Florence moved in.
We're trying to sandbag this opening up.
23 months earlier, Hurricane Matthew taught people in Lumberton that if the Lumber River gets high enough, it can flow into West and South Lumberton through a gap in the city's levee. The levee is this raised earthen mound that was finished in 1977, and for the most part, it's done its job. When the Lumber River floods, the levee has kept that water from spilling toward neighborhoods. It stretches from Alamac Road to the backside of Luther Britt Park, and the elevation of I-95 is part of that levee system too. It's here where the CSX railroad tracks and that local street called VFW Road pass under the interstate, creating a gap in the levee. And this is where water can pass through if floodwaters from the Lumber River are extremely high. It's only happened after Hurricane Matthew and Hurricane Florence.
We had to emergency evacuate. The water was coming through here like a river.
I could stand out there at 5th Street and just, see it coming across.
It got up way up to the windows, and it's just a bad situation.
Flooding hit hard in West Lumberton. People here have heard there's now a plan to build floodgates in the levee gap over the railroad tracks in the street, something Jonathan Butler fully supports in case there's another big rain event.
Without the floodgate here, it's just going to wipe this community out again and again and again and again.
A state report published in May indicates a plan to plug the gap was part of the original plan for the levee drawn up in the 60s. A 10-foot wide earthen dike was to have been constructed in the area, though the improvements never made. Not during construction in the 70s and not 3 decades later when Matthew hit. The flooding Matthew brought was a wake-up call, prompting city leaders to pick up the plan for floodgates. But it took nearly 2 years just to find money to move forward. With no floodgates in place before Florence, sandbagging was the backup. Floodwaters from the Lumber River eventually made their way through again, though.
There's nowhere for the water to go but through there.
Despite some concerns, the CSX may have held up the sandbagging or even been unresponsive to the floodgate plan. Several city leaders now tell me CSX supports the plan and is cooperating.
That is great. West Lumberton hopes that the city of Lumberton can work with CSX to get this done for us. Without the floodgate, we don't have a chance.
Maybe to keep the water out of my house, I won't have to keep running every time a hurricane season comes. But I hope it don't affect the other side of town. I really do.
With concerns like that in mind, there are plans for an extensive study into how the floodgates could affect the area. There's already debate about whether the sandbagging before Florence helped some areas while hurting others. That's now the center of nearly 30 lawsuits, which is why no city leaders would speak to me on camera for this story. The floodgate plan is moving forward, though, and it's expected to be completed in about 2 years. Reporting for News 13, I'm Brandon Herring.
News 13 also discovered a letter that indicates CSX didn't respond to Lumberton's request for help in 2017. You can read more at WBTW.com. CSX did release a statement saying the company is now working with the city on a permanent measure for stormwater management.